Hey, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Frank About Health on talkradio.nyc, on our YouTube channel, Talking Alternative, on our Facebook Live channel, we have finally returned, on our Twitter feed, as well as on our LinkedIn page. Great to meet all of you for the first time, or great to all of you returning back to this episode with our guest who's been here twice before, who's now going to expand upon our last conversation, which had to do with the power of language. Alison Petty. Her website right there, AlisonPetty.com, is where you can actually learn more about what she does as a mindset coach in the United Kingdom. But at the same time, she is catering to a global audience thanks to social media and thanks to this show. In fact, I decided to have Alison come back, not just to expand on the power of language, but to discuss two particular questions that help with our mindset. And the reason why we ended up discussing about this being an organic conversation is stemming from a recent webinar that she hosted and I was invited to, and we had a chance to follow up on some of what we talked about on Frank About Health, where she was then able to engage with a lot of people in her local area to help and deal with them on their various issues where mindset training and the usage of their language is helping them, as you'll probably discuss throughout the show, Alison. But at the same time, the two questions which we're going to talk about, we're going to do it in dedicated segments, and I'm going to leave them silent for now because I have to first issue my disclaimer. Please remember that this conversation you'll be hearing within the next hour are not the views of talkradio.nyc or of Frank About Health, but rather they are the views of conversational pieces that Alison and I will be engaging in to provide food for thought and different aha moments for the listeners out there looking for ways to improve on their quality of life. Now, if for any reason you decide that whatever treatment you're currently going through needs to be changed, please do not make changes based on our conversation. Make changes based on consultation with your primary care physician or other specialists, depending on what your ailment is. Otherwise, we hope that you enjoy the next hour. And all on that note, Alison, thank you for coming back to Frank About Health.
Hey, you're very welcome, and thank you for inviting me ×3. It's very exciting to be back, as always. Yes. I love our conversations.
Yes. Yeah. Now, for everyone out there who may or may not remember, Alison was here initially last May, I believe it was, where we talked about NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And at that time, both Phyllis Quinlan and I were able to understand the techniques of how NLP took Alison from, at the time, a wheelchair-bound individual to someone that became a rock climber, and that in itself had fostered education and training into becoming a mindset coach. She came back before the Thanksgiving holiday here in the US and discussed the power of language, obviously using NLP techniques, but how the power of the words that you choose as you are having a conversation either with yourself or with your friends, loved ones, acquaintances, and how it can actually impact the way your thinking is moving you. Now, this is where the special sauce comes in, because all of us are prone to being in a negative mindset, especially after the last 3 years of being in a COVID pandemic, or possibly having other kinds of issues impacting your personal professional life. But Alison is going to talk about how we can use not just the power of our language, but the power of two particular questions to shift your mindset from the negative to the positive, because the ultimate goal is to have as much of a healthy and high quality of life as much as possible. So I think, Alison, would you like me to start the first question, or would you like to first explain how you came up with those two questions?
Sure. Are we doing the first question in the second segment or this segment?
This segment is the overview and welcoming you back.
Okay, so I won't go into too much. Okay, well, I'll talk about how I came up with it. And also, do you want me to give a very quick overview of my journey, or do people know enough about that? Yeah, I give
exactly. For those of you who don't know about her journey, by all means, yeah, this will be like a refresher.
Yeah, I give like the 2-minute version. So basically, this is my reason and why I'm here and talking to you, and my reason for being a coach. So I specialize in transformational coaching. I'm an NLP master advanced practitioner of NLP coaching hypnotherapy. But my why is because when I was 17 years old, which is a very long time ago now, I was diagnosed with ME, CFS, known as in the States, and fibromyalgia, when I was 17. I spent the following 24 years predominantly bedbound and in a wheelchair, as you just said, living a very grim existence over those years. But my own transformation was in 2016 when I attended an NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming training program. And from being on that course, I was never in a wheelchair again. And more importantly for me, I never relapsed again. And as you just said, I've spent the last almost 7 years now rock climbing, mountain biking, traveling, hill walking, living in a van in the heart of the mountains in North Wales. I don't now. I have a home and a lovely fire. Well, I now have my own business as a coach, so I have to make sure I've got good Wi-Fi and, you know, somewhere to coach from. But yeah, I lived in a van for a couple of years in the mountains by choice, which was amazing.
Yes.
Yeah, so for me now, coaching is purpose, and what the lovely thing is that I get to pay it forward. So I get to use my history, my experience to help other people now dissolve whatever it is that's holding them back in their life in whatever way that is. So whether that's sleep issues or phobia or stress, overwhelm, burnout. I hear a lot of people talking about how they feel like they've lost their confidence or their self-worth. And I'm like, you haven't, you just can't see it. It's still there. I can't give it to you. It's already with you. It's kind of like the sun, when the sun disappears behind the clouds, it doesn't go anywhere. It just gets a bit covered up for a while. So yeah, for me, that's just really exciting, enabling people to just really create those transformations in their life. And as you said, like, you know, one of my big things that I'm always bringing on about is the power of language. And that's what we talked about on the last episode, because it is so powerful, not just that impact of the language we have, that when we speak to other people and they speak to us, the impact that can have, but it's that internal narrative and how impacting that is. So learning how to harness that really impacts our life, create what I call a roadmap for our brain, and start to really shift our life in the direction that we're coming off autopilot essentially and harnessing that mindset. So
no, absolutely. I am relieved to know, as I have experienced in conversations with you, how my mindset tends to shift, but to know that once it's in the negative zone, I can get back to the positive, and whatever has been fueling me continuously is not gone. It's just, as you said, hidden. And I know I've done shows on Frank About Health about narcissism and gaslighting, and I could say that I've probably been exposed to those individuals, and therefore the wool is pulled over my eyes, so I'm not aware of the strengths that I need reminders on. And even just doing this show helps to harness that, including having you on it. I mean, this conversation I've been looking forward to all day, because I can honestly say that I know we've had bad weather patterns here in New York over the last few days, and sometimes I'm probably one of those that gets affected by cloud and rain and cold and stuff like that. But I've also been dealing with a lot of issues surrounding family healthcare issues, and they do play on my level of motivation and focus. So the thing is that I knew that tonight we were going to be exploring what it is that you're doing best right now with your clients as well as with yourself. And just in our conversation, I feel like I'm having not the wool lifted from my eyes, but I'm able to see clearer. And I'm trying to take mental photographs of our conversation so that whenever I continue to see those same circumstances again, I can just bring myself back to this place and just refresh my mind to think where it needs to think.
Nice. No, I love it. And I always love our conversations and how it helps you to create shifts as well. And yeah, you know where I am as well, so you can always give me a shout. But yeah. Well, the two questions thing as well, I can sort of explain where that came from, and then in the next segment, if you want to, we can then go into what they are.
Sure. Let me share the screen to show people which questions I am looking into or that we've been discussing. And actually, that's your website. And here is question 1.
Oh, you've got okay. So for those listening, oh, that's cool. I was going to say, like, did you want me to share it? But you're already.
Well, I'm only sharing question 1 because we want everybody to be, right there on bated breath, waiting for the second life-enhancing question. But the thing is that the name of this episode is 2 Questions to Create Change. I've always said here on Frank About Health, I want to help people become aware of whatever is ailing them emotionally or physically and advocate for themselves to create positive change. But I think today what I'm interested in is your technique and how you came about it. And basically question 1 is this thought enhancing my life in any way, shape, or form whatsoever? I can listen to your voice saying that at the same time.
Okay,
You know?
well, no, that's great. So again, for those listening as well, I know you're going to talk about this later, but that thing you've just shown there is a download that's free on my website. So you just go to alisonpetty.com,
Right.
the menu, go to free downloads, and you can. There's a few other downloads there as well, but that sheet is literally just an A4 PDF, and it will have these 2 questions in exactly what the format you just showed. So this was maybe for me like 2 years ago, and I was just starting my training. So this was very early on. I've just done a year of clinical training in NLP coaching, hypnotherapy, and actually with the guy who created the course that got me out of the wheelchair. He's one of the leading NLP practitioners in the field. His name's Dr. Phil Parker. So I've just done my year of training with him, which has really been amazing and, absolutely priceless. But it was very early on in that time, and I was really starting to immerse myself and really understanding how neurology worked and how we can harness it.
Yes.
I was having a particularly difficult time for a few personal reasons. There was a big bereavement at the time, which I know I've mentioned before on previous shows, of my father passing away in the early lockdown of 2020.
Yes.
And it was around that time, and my mindset wasn't good. Obviously, he was my best friend in the world. My mum is also that. We very wonderfully still have her with us, but that was a really difficult time, and obviously the pandemic on top made it even harder. And I was going through a few other difficult challenges at the time, sort of life things, relationship stuff and other things, and a pandemic. So my mindset wasn't great. And I just remember one day I was in a car park in North Wales in the mountains, and I could just my brain was just going round in those spirals of the same negative thoughts over and over again. We all know that and experience that. That's part of the human experience. And I just found myself standing there and asking this question of myself. And it was very clear. It was like, is this thought helping me in any way, shape or form whatsoever? And I was kind of like this. I was like, is this helping me in any way, shape or form whatsoever? And the answer to that was immediately no, because it's like, I wouldn't be asking that question. And again, it says on that sheet there, the answer is going to be no, because if it was yes, you wouldn't be asking the question, because you'd be having a great time and life would all be good. Right. And that made me laugh. And I remember standing there just laughing. And that's really great. The brain loves humor. It kind of, wakes up your little sparkling neurology bits and pieces inside of your brain and just wakes it all up again. And so that was the first question. And what it did essentially was it just stopped everything in its tracks. And that's really powerful, obviously, to cut the point of that negative thought.
Right.
But the next part is the second question, which I know you want to save to the next one, and we've got a minute left, so this is perfect timing. So so I would really encourage people to stay and listen to the second part of the 2 questions, because the first question on its own is great, and a lot of my clients have talked about how when they catch negative thoughts, they'll just stop them, and then they'll stop them, and that's it. And it's like, great, no, that's brilliant that you're doing that and you have that awareness to do that. But if you don't put something else in its place, your brain's going to start it again. And we know this. It's like, you can stop it till the cows come home. If you don't put anything in its place, your brain's going to, before you know it, a minute, 30 seconds, 5 minutes later, so that thought's going to be there again and again and again. You're just going to keep going, stop, oh no, stop, oh no. So the next question is the part that changes.
Yeah, the motivation is to even come up with the question, because it stops your train of thought, whatever direction it's in, negative or positive, so that you can have some control over the moment and really pivot to where you need to go. Now we're going to pivot to our first commercial break. That being said, hold on for 2 minutes and we'll be back right here on talkradio.nyc and our 4 big social media platforms that are reaching all of you out there, both in the United States and in the UK, 5 hours ahead of time right now. I got 5:15 over here. It's probably 10:15 over there. Daylight savings time is coming up soon here in the US. But either way, I'm just glad you're all here tonight to hear this wonderful conversation with Alison and myself, and we'll be back in a few.
Are you a business owner? Do you want to be a business owner? Do you work with business owners? Hi, I'm Stephen Fry, your small and medium-sized business, or SMB guy, and I'm the host of the new show, Always Friday. While I love to have fun on my show, we take those Friday feelings of freedom and clarity to discuss popular topics on the minds of SMBs today. Please join me and my various special guests on Friday at 11 a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you on edge? Hey, we live in challenging, edgy times, so let's lean in. I'm Sandra Bargman, the host of The Edge of Every Day, which airs each Monday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc. Tune in live with me and my friends and colleagues as we share stories and perspectives about pushing boundaries and exploring our rough edges. That's The Edge of Every Day on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC. Uplift, educate, empower.
Isn't it queuing you in?
I don't know.
No, I hear it.
Okay, Okay, I was a little bit lost there for a second, but I'm glad I'm here for the second segment of this episode of Frank About Health. As we all discussed, the first question, is this thought helping me in any way whatsoever? What would be the impetus, Alison, for how that question can help shift your mindset to the direction it needs to be?
How do you mean, Mike? So,
especially if it's in the negative perception and you realize it's not helping you, what does it do to the brain, or what is it in the way you ask the question, whether it's in your head or verbally, that enables the individual to start shifting their mindset?
Well, that for me is really the second question. So the shift comes with the second question. The first question is really, it's also having the awareness, which can take practice. And, again, I'm speaking for myself here. I'm a practitioner of all this stuff, and this is my life, and I coach people this stuff all the time. But, I'm human. It's part of being human. I'm constantly aware, that my mindset goes through different, phases through the day, and life challenges happen, and then things are harder to deal with. So, but it's just having that awareness. And then when you catch negative thoughts, it's having that motivation, that something just to stop it, and wanting to change it, wanting your life to be different, and knowing that it can. And then when you do this kind of thing and you realize how it does shift you, that's when it becomes easier to do it the next time, because it's like, well, that's going to give me a freedom, that's going to make me feel good. So then the next time it's going to be easy to do it. But when you're new to this kind of thing, the first few times it can feel a bit like unfamiliar, if you like. It's a new thing. But yeah, having that awareness when you can, and then when you do notice a negative chatter, just that, is this thought helping me in any way, shape or form whatsoever? Very simple question. And then, as I say, the answer is only going to be no, because you wouldn't be asking it if the answer was yes. So
all right, so either way, it's used as a stop mechanism, so you can push back, reflect, and reframe.
Yeah,
correct?
But for me, it wouldn't even be reflect. So it's taking the reflection out of it, but reframing it by asking the second question. Because if you start to reflect on it, then you're going to fuel whatever that thing was. So what we want to do here is, whatever that negative thought was, chances are, I would say, speaking personally, 9 times out of 10, whatever that negative thought was, it's unhelpful, it's not useful, it's I'm not feeling good from it, and most likely it's not true. It's just my brain catastrophizing, or I sometimes call it, like, whatever it is I'm imagining the future, it's a figment of my imagination. It's like but mostly that thing of it just being not true. So if I was to start reflecting on it, I would just be fueling it. I would just be giving it power. I would be giving it life, essentially. And again, we know this, if we think about the times when our thought patterns are negative, if we start to analyze them, man, that spiral goes even faster and even deeper, and suddenly you're in the real depths of it because you're fueling it, you're giving that thing energy, and you're firing up those neural pathways.
Yes.
And it's, you know, that's a really key thing. And then we talked about in the last episode, how the neural pathways work, but you're essentially feeding those, and they are firing away and creating even stronger, darker thought patterns in your brain and your thinking. So
right. So in this particular case, would it be fair to say that 100% of your reason for asking question 1 is stemming from the fact that they are negative thoughts, maybe because symptomatically you're feeling like a headache or even some negative reaction to what you're thinking, almost like a wave of paranoia? Or are you also saying that there are people that have positive thoughts that they start to question, is this helping me in some way?
I've never sort of considered it if someone's having positive thoughts, because if you're having positive thoughts, then that's a good thing. But this is really, it's anything negative. In NLP, we just talk about, is it useful? Is this thing useful? And this is what I mean when my question is this helping me in any way, shape or form whatsoever? Is this thought useful to my life? And, you could also ask the question, is this true? And it's going to be like, I have no idea if it's true. Unless, very rarely you might know something is true because it's a factual thing that's happened. I don't know, you've just been served papers or something, and it's like there's something in your hand that's like, yeah, well, this is true, this isn't great. That's a fact. But it's the thoughts that go around it and the catastrophizing around it. Then we start to make things up, and our brain just goes and negative, and it all gets like very doom and gloom. So it's those moments where it's like, is this helping me? I've still got to go through this situation. If it's a situation that's difficult, I've still got to deal with that thing. But is this way of thinking going to make that, is it going to help me navigate that better? Or is it going to make me feel even worse while I've still got to navigate that thing? Because either way, I've got to navigate whatever that thing is. There's two ways of doing things, and to my mind, going at the thing with as much of a positive mindset as you can, even if that's, a bit challenging to get there, is only going to enable you to come from a better place and deal with any glitches that life might throw at you on the way, because we're not pretending here that life is smooth. And if you have a positive mindset, everything in your life is suddenly brilliant and rosy and sunny. That's not what we're saying. It's just that life's still going to throw curveballs. I was a really positive, I was one of the most positive, happiest 17-year-olds ever. And then I became ill, and 24 years of chronic illness and bedbound and wheelchair and all that kind of stuff. So
that created a pattern for you to derive negative thinking as a result of being in that condition for 24 years. I gather it's a learned habit of sorts.
You're absolutely going to have very not great thinking when, obviously we're not going into it here, but my story and how I got ill was pretty dramatic in the way it happened, and traumatic. It was very hard, very fast. So obviously my thinking, but I just mean in terms of like, I went from a very, very positive mindset to still having life throw things at me that were very difficult. So with these questions, I'm not suggesting that if you ask these questions, life is going to be breezy for the rest of your life. I wish it was, but that's not life. We're human. I often say it's like, well, for me, I had plans for life, but life had other plans for me, and you have to then deal with it. But when you do come at that thing with the more positive, constructive mindset, you're going to be in a much better place to deal with the difficult things that come. So this is where the second question comes in. Do you want me to do the second question now?
No, let's keep everybody waiting, because then otherwise the show will have nothing but more musical ensembles for us to dance to. I'm just kidding. But either way, what I really wanted to say is that I was looking at your website earlier and about how you love the power of our brain and how it reaches into depths of trying to live our life with passion and real motivation for helping others and stuff like that. In fact, if you don't mind, I want to show that quote because it moved me, especially when preparing this episode. So let me do that right now. I am passionate about the power we hold within our brain to create powerful change in our lives. As a coach, there is nothing more fulfilling than helping my clients harness this power so that they can enable positive change within their own lives and lead others with passion and purpose. And I just thought that that's you in a nutshell, basically. And I've already known that, but I wanted everyone to be firmly aware of it, especially at this point, because I see that from the 3 shows we've done together, which is almost a year in the making, if you think about it, it's like I can see how you've been able to use your understanding of language, your NLP techniques, and even, I'm sure, asking yourself those questions when you've had to, has been able to put yourself in the position you need to be in, especially when you're helping other clients that have similar stories that you want to help and improve upon. But I think what I've noticed, like in my own life, being an epileptic patient, I think I have loose associations that I continue to engage in. Maybe it's out of habit. Maybe it's the medication I take. Maybe it's just always trying to be vigilant and being focused in the moment when I'm doing something productive versus being distracted endlessly by a lot of burdensome situations that I've been involved in. COVID itself was a burden, don't get me wrong. I think we all dealt with that. But even now, as the world is kind of migrating away from the pandemic mindset, I have residue left over where I'm still seeing the neediness from friends and family that, I think that they would be able to handle on their own, but there becomes a pattern of being in a bubble for 3 years where people learn to rely on me. And when I'm trying to fly, I'm being pulled in. So I notice my thinking goes negative, but not so much into the realm of those people who've suffered real traumas where that is their normal pattern, but to the realm where I could be focused on something productive, and then all of a sudden, maybe I forgot I locked the door at home, or the oven is still on and I forgot to shut it off. It's an erroneous thought because I know it's off, but I have it stuck in my mind. And it takes some other distraction to get rid of it. I haven't used the technique of asking myself, is this thought helping me whatsoever? I think I'll start doing that. But the thing is that, granted, it's also not a positive thought, but it's not really so much a negative thought either. It's a distraction. I'm sorry?
No, carry on.
No, and as a distraction, it can become a negative thought, because if you're feeling this air of imbalance, or, oh no, I'm disturbed, I don't have any way of confirming if my fear is not true or not, you have to find a way to just get rid of it. And I guess maybe that's just something for me to learn, but I'm learning from your technique that it's possibly in the category predominantly of negative thoughts that you can start to feel symptomatically that you feel uneasy, or it's not really doing much for you. But there are those distractions that I think a lot of people are still faced with in general. And maybe people need to learn how to manage those as well.
True. I mean, I think this, just running out of time on this segment, but
I do see it. Ladies and gentlemen, I think what I just did was create a cliffhanger for all of you to come back into the third segment, so Alison can now address what I brought up about distractions. So stay tuned as we're talking about 2 questions for positive change right here on talkradio.nyc and all of our socials. See you soon.
Are you passionate about the conversation around racism? Hi, I'm Reverend Dr. TLC, host of the Dismantle Racism Show, which airs every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern on talkradio.nyc. Join me and my amazing guests as we discuss ways to uncover, dismantle, and eradicate racism. That's Thursdays at 11 o'clock a.m. on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you. Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host the program Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back. Okay, so before we got into the break, and thank you for monitoring the time, Alison, you were responding to my theory about distractions helping to fuel negative thinking when the distraction itself is the negative thought. Unmute.
Yeah,
okay.
I was just going to say to that, these questions are really powerful. If it's a distraction that's causing a negative thought, it doesn't matter what it is that's causing it. It's the same thing, it's slightly different, but we could be talking about paranoia, we could be talking about anxiety, just stress, just overwhelm, catastrophizing, all these words. Depression, obviously depression is kind of a result of a lot of negative churning that's going on, and other things as well, but chemically and all that kind of stuff as well. But right. If it's a distraction, if somebody if we haven't really talked much about that, and perhaps that's another show like what we're talking about there, but endless topics here. But if it's like I say, if it's a distraction that's causing one to feel negative, then it still relates. To me, it's just as I come back to that thing of like, is whatever this thing that's going through my head helpful to me? Is this helping me in any way, shape, or form whatsoever? If the answer to that is no, then that's where you are. That's a place that's that you want to shift out of. Right. And more. I'm sorry. Say it again. Well, it just doesn't matter. The reason that you got to the asking the question is kind of irrelevant. And again, it's like not even wanting to really analyze what that is. It's just like, if you find yourself in a place that isn't feeling good for whatever reason, you're stuck, you're distracted, you're something, and it's not helping you. It's really that simple to me. It's like, is this helping me in any way, shape, or form? No. Right. Stop. Right. Yeah. And then the second question. Now for the second question, I'm going to share the screen and say to everybody, here we go. Dun, 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 dun. Let me get to it over here. What thought can I have instead that will enhance my life, shift me forward, make me smile, etc.? And as you indicate, AKA all of the good things. Well, it hasn't come up on the screen, but again, if people want to go and they can download it from the website, it didn't show up for some reason. I don't know why. Oh, wow. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So it's okay. Either way, if people want to download it, just go to the website and they can download it. Okay. Shall I explain this bit then? Yeah, by all means. By all means. So this is a really important bit, and this is where it starts to shift. And this is the powerful part of the stopping it. And as I say, not fueling it, not analyzing, just stopping that thought. But the second question is a very, very quick follow-up. And the question is something along the lines of, what thought can I have instead? So what thought can I have instead to replace that thought that will... And again, this is whatever version's right for the person asking the question. So we all have our own ways of speaking. So this is why I've written it in the way I have, with like they're called forward things in between. I can't know what they're called, slashes in between. So what thought could I have instead that would make me feel good, shift me forward, lift me up, make me feel amazing, whatever that is for that person that resonates for them, that way of saying it. But essentially, what thought could I have instead that would make me feel good, move me forward, shift me? So when we ask this question, this is where with the brain, It's really important how we ask questions of ourselves. Now, again, this is potentially a whole other show, because this is something that's really, really important when we ask questions. So if you think about your brain, well, so when you go to the library, and so you might go to the library and you might ask the librarian for a copy of The Great Gatsby. So, if you go to the library and ask for The Great Gatsby, they're going to come back a few minutes later and they're going to hand you a copy of The Great Gatsby. What they're not going to do is come back and hand you a copy of The Shining, because you've asked for The Great Gatsby. I mean, it's a great book for sure, but you've asked for The Great Gatsby. You're not looking to read like a really dark horror Stephen King novel. So they're not going to offer you The Shining. They're going to say, here's a Great Gatsby. So they're very good at what they do, very good at giving you what you ask for. And the brain is the same. So this is how I like to think of it. The brain is like that internal library that is full of like files of our past, of our history, of our memories, of our experiences, of our thinkings about the future, our catastrophizing, our imagining the wonderful things. So it's just full of all these files. And then there's this inner librarian that will go and collect what we ask for when we ask certain questions. So when we ask ourselves the question, what thought could I have instead? And the very specifically that will make me feel good. If I just said to myself, what thought could I have instead? The brain's going to come back with, like very, just something random, and it could be something negative. So it's really important to say, what thought could I have instead that will make me feel good? Because the brain will go and find me something from my inner library that will make me feel good.
Yes.
And it's really important to be very, very specific with this. So, and this is one of the things I love about the brain, but this is why when we're not specific with our questions, we can really get in trouble. So yeah, it's really that simple. And when I asked this question of myself in this car park, because that was my immediate follow-up question, because I knew enough at that time to know that while it was really good that I'd stopped that thought, if I'd have just walked away, that thought would have kept coming back and back and back. And I knew enough about NLP and how the brain worked at that time to be like, right, I have to replace this with something else. And so I automatically just said, okay, what could I have instead that's going to make me feel good? I can't remember what the thought was at the time, but all I do remember is a few minutes later, I couldn't remember what that original negative thought was. And I was standing in the car park going, what was that thought that I was having? What was that thought? And I started laughing because to me, it was like, oh, that's awesome. I don't even know what that thought was. And I didn't want to think about it for too long and bring it back. It's like, okay, let it go. That's gone. That's like a pathway that's kind of gone quieter. And the more I do this, the quieter that negative pathway, neural pathway is going to get until, it's dissolved. And I'm replacing it with all these amazing things, which are true in my life. So it might well have been, I don't know, I can't remember, but it might well have been at the time, my answer might have been something like, what's going to make me feel good instead? What thought's going to make me feel good? It might have been like, I'm seeing my friend Zach later. Oh yeah, no, that's great. Oh my God. And it's the sun's shining, because it was shining, and I was in nature that day. And before I knew it, my brain was full of all these good things, and I was completely shifted in a different direction. So
very interesting. My question to you is simply, how is it that the brain is able to create negative thinking that has no substance in fact, and is just able to sit there and create negative reactions for you? And yet you have the positive feelings that replace them, make you even forget that they existed. But the positive ones are based in fact and in reality and in the environment, especially if it's a shiny day. How is it that the brain is able to create erroneous negative thoughts?
Well, we know that a big part of it is that the brain is trying to protect us. So I know, again, speaking from my own experience, we go through life, as I said earlier, life throws curveballs, things happen that aren't great, and we deal with them at the time in the best way we can. And what happens is the brain collects information and evidence about that thing, and then it becomes, for instance, I can use the example, I often have clients that have fear of giving presentations because they once gave some kind of presentation. There's a guy in particular who was 14 and he dropped his drumsticks doing a recital in front of friends, and they laughed. And before that moment, he was a really confident kid. But as soon as that happened, for the rest of his days until we met, which was probably like 15-ish years later, he was really nervous every time he had to give a presentation, and he did them a lot because he was in higher education. And they always went fine, but he would have this like fear of it. And it's like the brain's going, well, that happened last time, so it might well happen again, and let's be ready for it, and let's if we expect it, then we can't get hurt, we can't get burned because we're ready for it, So it's like it doesn't know to leave that experience in the moment and just help you deal with it and then just leave it there. It just becomes your new narration. That's what happens when you give presentations. We mess up, people laugh, and it hurts and it's horrible, and it might well happen again, so let's be ready for it. So we collect all this evidence throughout our life. And one of the wonderful things about NLP is that we can go back to these times, and it's a little cheesy, but I say you can't they say you can't rewrite history, but I say you can rewire it. Because I've done it with clients, I do it all the time. I do it myself, but you can go back, and there's a particular process that I do where, we basically recreate it, rewire it. The thing still happens, different response, and the brain then takes that on as the new narrative. So there are ways of changing this narrative, and again, the brain might go, "Hang on a second. Pretty sure we're really scared of giving presentations because when we were 14, 30, 20, 15 years ago." We dropped our sticks and some kid laughed, right? The brain would just go, okay, cool, new narrative. It would just take whatever you say. And this is why those questions that you ask are so important, coming back to that. Because if I was standing in that car park that day and I wasn't specific about wanting to feel good, well, even if I was, which I was specific, the brain didn't go, hang on a second, I'm pretty sure a minute ago we were having really negative thoughts and you don't feel very good about yourself right now, and there's really bad stuff going on for you and this feels horrible, right? The brain just went, all right, cool, let's go and find something that's going to make you feel good because that's the question you asked, and it comes back with that copy of The Great Gatsby.
Like a computer, basically.
Yeah, so your program, and that's the programming part of NLP. So that's the P part, it's the programming, and you're programming with your language, which is the L, which is your linguistics, and in your programming with your language, your neuropathways, which is the N. So this is why it's so specific to ask that, because it will just come back with what you ask for. If I said, I want to feel bad, what thought could I have to make me feel bad? My brain's not going to go, wait, no, surely you want to feel good, right? It's going to go, okay, let's find all the bad things. And that's what you'll get. And it will release chemicals as well that will, add to that. Same way when you feel good. You start to think happy thoughts. You start to be thinking about sunshine. Oh, I'm seeing my friend Zach, and immediately my shoulders go back. Even now, as I'm saying it, I move differently, and then chemicals get released, happiness chemicals, and so.
Yes. Well, what that has taught me, and before we go to our next break, I just want to leave for the audience, viewers, and listeners out there that I guess aside from the two questions you have to ask yourself, you have to add some sayings to create affirmation. And one of them is the past does not equal the future. So therefore, maybe people can go ahead, especially when you know and realize that your brain is like a computer where you just have to issue it commands to act in the way that is going to best accommodate your life or your moment or whatever your pathway is going forward. And the thing is to not own it, but to manage it as like a computer. It's the data you give yourself that you're able to reposition. So I'm also thinking, and I want to cover this in the final segment of the show, that, sometimes it's external situations that give you the information to your brain that you can sometimes use other than the reminders you can tell yourself. So stay tuned, everybody, right here, as we've already discussed the two questions that can help us lead to change for a happier and healthier life. And let's talk about the future when we return with Alison, right here on talkradio.nyc and all of our streaming platforms, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Stay tuned.
Hey everybody, it's Tommy D, the nonprofit sector connector, coming at you from my attic. Each week here on talkradio.nyc, I host a program, Philanthropy in Focus. Nonprofits impact us each and every day, and it's my focus to help them amplify their message and tell their story. Listen each week at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time until 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, right here on talkradio.nyc.
In a post-COVID world, you may have many unanswered questions regarding your health. Are you looking to live a healthier lifestyle? Do you have a desire to learn more about mental health and enhance your quality of life? Or do you just want to participate in self-understanding and awareness? I'm Frank R. Harrison, host of Frank About Health, and each Thursday, I will tackle these questions and work to enlighten you.
Tune in every Thursday at 5 p.m. on talkradio.nyc, and I will be frank about health to advocate for all of us.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to Talk Radio NYC at www.talkradio.nyc. Now broadcasting 24 hours a day.
Welcome back, everybody, to our final segment of this special episode of, well, I always say special episode. Every episode is special. But what I'm really engaged with in this particular show is Alison has been able, over the last 3 episodes, to bring the pieces and segments of her toolkit to be able to really show the big picture, which is the power of our brain in being able to utilize language with NLP techniques, as well as to somehow command rational thought while dealing with the ongoing hurdles that life does throw at you, whether it's real circumstances or paranoid thoughts or possibly just mood because of bad weather. But the thing is what we've discussed over the last 45 minutes are 2 particular questions which we can use as guideposts in order to help accommodate our brain in being able to make sure we live the kind of life that we want. And as she illustrated in the last segment, the second question is the most pivotal because it is the one that commands your brain to take the initial thoughts that you had and hopefully replace them with the new positive thoughts that are going to be more relevant to what your intentions are or even what is going on in your life at the time that has to be dealt with. But what I find still interesting, what I still find interesting to explore is that how a lot of people are probably have learned to be dependent, whether it's on their own thoughts or on the environment at large, to determine how to feel about their day. I think we kind of lost a sense of how to master our own acclimation to having a balanced life. And I don't know, maybe it was the pandemic that did it. Maybe it's a lot of world events that are going on that continue to pummel us through the media every day. A lot of it is, sometimes interpretive and sometimes and a lot of it is factual. But instead of spending each day debating what's real and what's not, I think what we all have to learn to do is to debate what our life is like right now and how can we make it better. So that being said, Alison, can you address for me what I left the last segment with about external situations or conversations being a matter of motivation for the brain to think more positively and becoming more independent at being able to get your brain to do so and not being reliant on just situations, but rather a combination of the two?
Yeah, I'm just thinking how my fire is going out here and how to not be dependent on that to make me feel good.
It's having a negative thought. I'm kidding.
Yeah, I was just watching it. I was like, oh no. And I'm like, no, it's fine. It's just the fire going out. But, it's just that, as you're talking about big external situations and dependent on other things. And, just always makes me think of my mum. One of the many, many wise things that she says over the years, and especially when I was growing up, is, is that thing of not being dependent on others to make us feel good or to make us happy, particularly. And, what I love about these 2 questions is that it enables us to take, I like to use the word harness, to really harness our mindset and our beautiful brain that is just so capable of creating powerful change for us if only we know how to do it. And these 2 questions are very, very simple yet very powerful when they are used together. So yeah, I mean, when and also, yes, it's that thing as well, when we start by looking after ourselves and working with ourselves, we can then we set the tone for others. We have that better impact on other people, and they will only want to they can't help but then want to if we come from a really good place, that's going to affect the world around us and the people around us and our relationships and our dynamics. And you and I talked about that, I think, on the first episode, maybe.
Right.
About how we can change those relationships, because in the same way we, don't want to be depending on other people to make us happy. We can't change other people. It's some of those sort of life things that are just the way they are. So, it's really empowering when we realize how we can actually, create what I call a roadmap for our brain. And until we come off autopilot, which is what, including myself, for many, many years, and I still drop into it, as I said earlier, like every day I have to like pull myself out of, places where I feel stuck or things aren't great. And sometimes it's for good reasons, because, things, again, we're not pretending life isn't challenging. But again, more often than not, it's because suddenly, it's all gone really cloudy and I'm definitely a sunshine person and my mood drops, or I'm tired, or, I've got loads of meetings and I'm just, feeling, overwhelmed and all those kinds of things. And it's like, come on, this isn't really that bad. And there's a lot of drama there sometimes as well. So when we realize that we have that agency to create a roadmap when we come off autopilot, so the roadmap that you have when you're on autopilot is likely to be, not always, for sure, like we can be on autopilot and be in really good places. I'm not suggesting that, being on autopilot is always negative, but if you're in a negative place, you're not really being aware of how you can shift that for yourself. So when we learn how to shift that by using our language and other things as well, but particularly for me, it's about the language, that internal narrative, then we can change that roadmap and essentially come off autopilot and set the course for our life. Right.
So is this also what you've started to incorporate into your sessions with your clients?
Absolutely. I mean, any new client that I get, every time, I always offer a free discovery call. And in that, I'll always say something about language, and I'll make some joke about, if you've ever seen any of my videos or anything about what I do, I'm always banging on about the power of language, because it's such a big part of what I do with clients. And sometimes we'll just have a whole session just talking about language and teaching them how to, reframe the way they're saying things, or to understand how, if they say, you can say things in lots of different ways, obviously, but negative or positive. And I use the metaphor of calories. If you've got to eat 1,800 calories a day, you can either get to those calories by eating rubbish, like burgers and chips and chocolate, and it'll feel good, but you'll feel sick doing it and you won't feel good about it. Or you can get to those 1,800 calories eating really healthy food, salads and all the good stuff, which will take longer and maybe not as fun, but you'll feel good, you'll feel healthy, and feel very, very virtuous as well. So it's the same thing, getting to that same end result. So again, it's the same with language. You can say the same thing, but you can say it in two very different ways. It's like, just as a very quick example, if I had a client came to me, and this has happened, who variation on the theme of this, but issues with confidence about going to an event, I might say, what do you want to be? One of the questions we ask is, what do you want to feel instead of what you currently feel? There's a strong chance they'll say, I don't want to feel bad about myself when I go to events. I don't want to feel uncomfortable when people watch me, when people look at me. I'm like, okay, I understand what it is you're saying, but let's try saying this in a whole different way. And I will explain to them how active language works and passive language works. And I'll get them to say the same thing using active language. And that version will be, when I go to an event, I want to feel confident. When I'm standing in a room and there's people looking at me, I want to feel really good about myself. So rather than, I don't want to feel bad about myself, I don't want to feel, awkward and people looking at me. So don'ts and bads and, awkward. You're saying, I want to feel confident. I want to feel, grounded. I want to feel proud of myself. All these different things. Basically, they're telling me exactly the same thing, but I'll get them to then say both versions, and they can feel that difference within them. They're like, oh, okay, I get it, because they'll just start I want to feel confident, I want to feel good about myself, rather than, oh, I don't want to feel bad, I don't want to feel like, oh God, like all that stuff. So again, it's like you're creating that roadmap, and it's the same with these two questions. What I want to feel that will make me feel good. So what I want to think what can I think instead that will make me feel really good about myself? And you immediately start to be like, oh, what's going to make me feel good? Right. Oh, that and this. And oh, yeah, no. And now you'll start smiling because you'll be thinking of things that make you, you know, friends or people or situations that the brain's coming back and saying, oh, these things make you feel good. This is what you can think of. And you'll start thinking about them and you will shift.
You know, it's been 3 episodes of Frank About Health where you definitely have helped me shift in a lot of ways, both personally and professionally. But I understand that professionally, you're about to undertake your own podcast. You want to share with the audience out there when it debuts, where people can find you, where I can find you. I definitely will be on the lookout.
Yeah. Well, these shows are going to be on it, and I will be definitely sending you the link. So I think at the moment it's going to be called Harness Your Mindset, Create Your Life, which is my tagline for my coaching work. But you know, you can find it through my website, AlisonPetty.com. There will be a link on one of the drop downs under inspiration for the podcast. So yes, the first episode is going to be up soon, and these kind of shows are going to be on there where I'm guest appearances, but it's also going to be a thing called Conversation On, and then it's going to be the theme of being human. So lots of different themes of being human. So talking about topics with certain, you know, different people about, you know, resilience, grief, what it is to know what your purpose is, you know, all those really big life things of being human. So yeah.
Yeah, all right.
Find it through my website.
Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, right here, we have a minute left before we end for the evening, but Alison Petty has been very instrumental to me and Frank About Health over the last year. I know that you have ongoing webinars as well on LinkedIn. Be on the lookout to see some of those. Everyone should check out her website, AlisonPetty.com, so that if you do want to consult with her and use the power of your language for your quality of life, she's definitely worth talking to. I'll be honest, I've talked with her privately about ongoing issues that I've been dealing with, and she's been able to help me bounce back from them. It's a matter of perspective and sometimes perception, but it is in the power of how you manage your brain's thoughts, as well as the way that you communicate while trying to help the neurotransmitters go in the pathways that you desire. Stay tuned for tomorrow's slate of shows on talkradio.nyc, which are always Friday with Stephen Fry, and then starting in the morning with Philanthropy in Focus with Tommy D. We'll be back right here next Thursday with another episode of Frank About Health. Also, be mindful that we are now on 4 social media platforms, and you can always find out archives of previous episodes of Frank About Health on my personal website, frankrharrison.com. If you have any questions for myself or Alison, you can forward them to my email address, frankrharrison1@gmail.com, or reach us and make comments in the YouTube channel when you're retrieving this video and sharing it with your friends and family. And don't forget my disclaimer, if anything you heard today is worth changing your current mental health treatment, please consult with your physician before you make such a change. We don't want to create liability. We just want to be providing advocacy. Thank you again, Alison, for being here on Frank About Health. You will be back. I'll just tell you in what way, shape, or form that'll be. But I am looking forward to, I'm sorry?
You know where I am. You know where to find me.
Exactly. And I will be looking for you in your new podcast. All right, everybody, we're signing off right now. Thanks for being here on Frank About Health on talkradio.nyc. And we're signing off. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Take care.
Thanks, Frank. Bye.
All righty, same here. Bye-bye.